So remember when I said I was going to do like a recap of all the novels together? No. Hey, it's Romania Black. And yeah, I had every intention when I saw there were 6 light novels. I was like, well, I don't want to read a light novel and record my reaction to reading 129 pages because that's a lot. And I was like, and that was just for one of the 6 light novels. So I was like, well, I'll just read one of the light novels and take some notes, and then I'll just read all the light novels and do a recap of all 6 of them. So I started reading the first one, and I got like through 2 pages of notes in the first chapter and was like, ooh, this is gonna be a very long video if I do all 6 of them and then do a reaction video for all of them to talk about every single novel. It was gonna be a lot. So I think the better thing to do is what my original intention was, which is to do a video for each light novel and talk about each one individually, because this one light novel had a lot of things happening in it. So that's what we're going to do. So this is going to be our look at Kuroko's Basketball Replace, the light novel series. Now, I know that there is a manga out there that talks about these same events, these same extra little canon snippets, vignettes, what have you. And there are going to be a couple of those manga chapters that I'm going to have to react to and have to read alongside you all. So I want to give a special shout out, first of all, to Truck, as well as Moko on Tumblr. Moko apparently did a lot of the translations, and Truck put all of this together for each volume of the 6 light novels for me to look at, and even went out of their way to get like links to the manga chapters that could not be translated to see them and all that. And I'm so excited. That is just going above and beyond. So you two, thank you for doing that. All of my love. But yeah, so basically I'm going to be going through each of the light novels. I don't know how long these videos are going to be. They may not be very long, but just telling you the notes that I have about each chapter so that if you don't get the chance to read the light novels, you can at least know what they're about. And if there's anything fun that happens in them. And honestly, in this first light novel, there's a lot of fun that happened. I really enjoyed it. And it was a lot of fun to read and take notes on, to see the pictures that are in the light novel books. I wish that this content was adapted and translated into English, but maybe they're banking that them Americans ain't reading. They're not gonna read these light novels. So I'm very glad that there was actually light novels that were translated into English so I could talk about them. So the first light novel that we look at in the Replace series is dealing with Teiko Middle School and dealing with them back in their middle school days. It's super, super adorable. It's not entirely middle school though. There's Teiko Middle School. There's also Kaijou gets 2 chapters in this book, and Seiren get 2 chapters. And there's a bonus chapter from Nago's point of view. It's really a lot of fun. So it's very interesting. It's a very hodgepodge collection of vignettes. It doesn't really follow a narrative chronological structure. It's just like, here's some side stories, and we just put them together. And 2 of them have a thread combining them. The other ones are just very random. So I don't know exactly what happened if they were all published individually in different locations, and then the publisher was like, let's bind them all together into a light novel, and they were like, sure. If that was the situation, I'm going to be very curious, because this is the only one I've read so far. As soon as I finish volume 1, I'm like, I want to go ahead and record my reaction to it while everything is still fresh in my mind. So I finished it last night, and today I was like, okay, I'm going to record my my discussion of the notes. I have like 8 pages of notes that I want to go through with y'all, but I don't know if the other novels are going to be exactly the same way. If they are, cool. They had 6 chapters in this one, and each chapter, they were all different lengths. So some of them were longer than others. The first chapter was probably the longest, and it was like 50-something pages. And then after that, they were all like fairly short chapters. But I'm also going to show you guys, in addition to the cover that you guys can see here, I'm going to show you if there were any pages and pictures shared that coincide with each story, and kind of go over those pictures with y'all so you have an idea of what story I'm talking about as we go. So chapter 1 of this is the Teiko Middle School eventful afternoon after school. The Teiko Middle School's eventful after school. That is a mouthful. So yeah, so going through my notes here, it takes place while the Generation Miracles are in middle school at Teiko. It starts out, Momoy kind of has the entire narrative in this story, which I thought was fun, that Momoy takes center stage. I thought that was really cool. And she's talking to her friend Izumi, which I almost confused for Izuki at first. And I was like, wait, she knew him? No, her friend's name is Izumi Yayoi. and and her friend is like chiding her because apparently the captain of the volleyball team asked Momoy out, and she said no. So automatically I was getting like Haikyuu vibes. I'm like, wait a minute, Teiko, what volleyball team is that in Haikyuu? What is this? What's happening? You know, it was a lot of fun. But apparently the volleyball team captain confesses and she says no, and he is the sixth guy to confess to her, and she's rejected him as well. She's like the Tsubomi of Teiko Middle School, basically. But Izumi claims that Momoy loves someone else, and that's why she keeps rejecting him. So Momoy doesn't come out right and say, she doesn't give a reason why she rejects him. She just says, oh, well, I don't know him very well. And Izumi's like, well, that's because you like Aomine, and that's why you don't want to date anybody else. And immediately Momoy's like, oh, well, you know, we just hang out because, she says, one, we hang out because we're childhood friends. And Izumi's like, sure. And then she says that he needs somebody to watch over him because otherwise he'll get in trouble. And Izumi is like full on fangirling. Izumi's like, well, you never know, you know, that you guys might just be childhood friends now, but someday that could bloom into a romance. And I'm like in here as I'm reading the story, like eating popcorn going, So Izumi's speaking my language automatically in this novel. But Momoy kind of shrugs her off, and at first you don't know if she has met Kuroko at this point, because you're just kind of like, she doesn't want to acknowledge who she likes, but she does say that she likes somebody. And so she meets up with the team at practice and Kuroko, and then she muses. What I find interesting is that she muses whether or not she has a crush on Kuroko, but it's not established for certain that she has feelings for him. Towards the end, we'll talk about her and Kisei towards the end. She kind of says that she does, but she's still trying to figure out exactly what it is. She says that she started knowing his presence. And what I like about this moment is she says, I didn't notice him at first, but once I started knowing his presence, he was compelling, and she finds herself drawn to him. Which I'm like, yeah, that's Kuroko in a nutshell. Like, you don't notice him at first, but once you do, you can't get away from him. I'm like, Kagami's sitting in the back nodding his head going, yes. So she also says it was the first time she was conscious of a guy. So I'm like, okay, this is the first guy that you noticed. Nice. And it was Kuroko. So Momoy's the focus of the story as she interacts with the Generation of Miracles. I like that she openly finds Murasaki Bara's like forward laziness irritating at first. But she notes that she's just kind of like annoyed with him, but she tells her friend, she's like, communicating with Murasaki Bara requires, quote, an open mind and giving up early to his rules of communication. I love that. I love that she's like, you just gotta like, just be open-minded, know that he only communicates this one way, and just go with the flow. Like, it's really funny. And so Murasaki Bara tells Momoy that Akashi wants her to walk home with Kuroko. And Momoy's like, is Akashi trying to play matchmaker? Which you think as the audience, you're like, is Akashi trying to hook Kuroko and Momoy up? Why? That is not the reason. We find out the reason later on. It turns out he wanted her to walk. She starts walking home with just Kuroko, and then, of course, all the others come, too, because they're a rainbow. They come in a set. You can't separate one from the rainbow. All the colors are together. Although, Akashi is only there to make sure that she takes off with him, and then he hightails it out of there, which instantly gave me Shu vibes from Sarune. I just pictured Akashi, like, turning the corner, and there's the butler with the limousine, and he hops in the limousine and takes off. He doesn't want his friends to see that he has special privilege, right? That's how I took it, but we'll see. So the story talks about how many of the Generation of Miracle players use Momoy's notes for studying because they're not very great academically. So they use Momoy's notes to study because she's smart, a nice little connection between her and Riko. And they decide that they're going to go to an arcade. They're going to study later, but they're going to go to this arcade first to try to win some snack prizes for Murasaki Bara because Murasaki Bara is complaining that he needs snacks. And so, of course, in anime fashion, they end up at this arcade. And so, somehow or another, that through a series of events, Kuroko and Momoy end up separated by themselves, which leads to Momoy thinking like, oh, is this a date? But then Murasaki Bara shows back up, and he had went off to get these drinks, and he gives one to Kuroko. Now, Kuroko takes a drink out of the can, and he offers it to Momoy, who didn't have a drink, and she freaks out because she's like, oh my god, this is like an indirect kiss. Kuroko just took a drink out of this glass. He's offering it to me. We're going to share an indirect kiss. Oh my gosh. And just as she's about to have that happen, Aomine shows up, takes the drink, and drinks it. Aomine gets the indirect kiss, and Momoy's like, I don't get anything. And he's like, wait, did you want this? Like, just, it was hilarious. I was like, oh my gosh, like all the Al Kuro fans are just like, and Momoi's like, why can't I have nice things? And so Momoi gets mad at him. But the sad thing about it is Momoi gets mad because she can't have the indirect kiss now that Almine's taken it from her. Almine doesn't understand what's going on. And so he sees that she's mad about the drink and he's like, oh, well, I'll go get you a drink now. And it was like when Almine went to get Kuroko the drink at the hot springs. It had that exact same vibe. Like Almine's like, well, I'll just go get you a drink then if that's what you want. Like he just doesn't understand. He does not realize what the issue was. It was really, really cute. Like there are some moments where Almine genuinely is like a nice kind of romantic guy. And Momoi's just like ruining my time with Kuroko. And so Momoi gets mad and she rushes off on her own to get her own drink. And that's when she gets cornered by these really two gross thugs. Like these two guys come out of the shadows and they're like catcalling her and being just genuinely sleazy. And so she gets in trouble and she wants her knight in shining armor to come, which she imagines is Kuroko. And he comes. Like Kuroko shows up first, like ready to fight these thugs. Kuroko, it's like the last game where Kuroko went straight to Nash and was just like, I'm here to talk with you. Like Kuroko instantly shows up, like ready to throw down. And these guys are like, what the hell? And then as they're about to fight Kuroko, Almine shows up and beats them up and they run away. It's great. And then Almine gets on to Momoi being like, if you wanted a drink, I would have gave you one. Like it's just, he's trying his best, right? And trying his best. But yeah, Almine, Kuroko, and Murasakibara come and they chase the guys away. So they meet back up with Kisei and Midorima, which apparently Kisei had gotten cornered by a bunch of fangirls for pictures and Midorima was just stuck there, which is really funny. And Kisei's trying to show Midorima all the pictures. And when they all gather together, they're next to a photo booth and they decide to take a photo together. And it's really super cute. They all can't fit in the photo booth, so it's kind of like just them all piled in and crammed. It's really adorable. I like it a lot. And so they have their adventures. They play like Dance Dance Revolution and like all these other games and like the crane game. They play a whole bunch of like your stereotypical arcade stuff. And then Momoi walks Kuroko home like Akashi told her to. And Kuroko disappears. Like Momoi is supposed to be watching him and she's like, what the hell? And then she loses Kuroko and finds him at this basketball court. And apparently Kuroko had been told to only observe, not play. And Momoi kind of enforces it. Like she's like, no, Akashi told you to observe, so you're not playing. And Kuroko kind of like gets kind of down like, okay. But then at the basketball court that he ran off to, the two thugs from earlier show up. And they're like harassing a kid that they realize is one of the second string members from Teiko. And so of course, Kuroko is like, I gotta defend this kid. He's on the second string with me. Apparently this is before Kuroko got into the first string. He's like, I gotta help him out. I know who he is. And that's when Momoi reveals that Akashi wasn't having her follow Kuroko to set her up with him. It's because Kuroko hurt his hand the day prior and sprained it. And Akashi was afraid that Kuroko would try to play basketball with it and make it worse. And it's like, oh, that's what the reality was. Because at first I was like, why would Akashi be playing matchmaker? That doesn't make sense. He doesn't seem like that type. And then you find out, oh, it was because Momoi is responsible, unlike, 3/4 of the other Generation of Miracles, and would make Kuroko not play with it. I feel like Midorima would be the other responsible one, but he wouldn't care. He'd just be like, I don't know, play if you want. But so Momoi tries to tell Kuroko not to challenge the guys, but Kuroko already challenges them. The guys they're so sexist and awful. They want to win Momoi as a prize if they beat Kuroko. And I'm like, really? And Kuroko's like, no, if I win, you're going to apologize to her face. And so at first, Kuroko's going to challenge the two guys. And the two guys have these three other men show up. And Kuroko's like, well, that's not fair. And they're like, we don't care. And right about that time, Almine, Kisei, and Midorima show up. So Murasakibara's already gone home. He's got quite a ways to go. But the other three show up and they decide to play against the thugs. And there's this really cute moment where Almine and Kuroko fist bump. It's really cute. It's adorable. And they, of course, beat the guys and they leave. So that was fun. That was very satisfying. And so, yeah, after the game, Midorima gives Momoi, they're talking about studying. Studying gets brought back up. They're like, all this stuff's happening and we still have to study for our test. And Midorima, after Momoi says that she'll loan them her notes, he gives her his lucky rolling pencil as a gift for helping him study. And Kisei teases Momoe that they came all the way out here to see if Momoe made a move on Kuroko. Which I thought that was pretty interesting, that Kisei was like, so did you make a move on him? And I'm like, it was like a big deflation of the Kuro Kisei ship, because Kisei seems more interested in seeing if Momoe gets with him. So I'm like, okay. Which only fuels my Kasamatsu Kisei ship later on, but you know. And so then Momoe says that she did make progress with Kuroko, which I was like, did you? When she says that, Kisei's like, and I'm like, did you really make progress? I don't feel like you did, but okay. And then everything is really cute. Like, they all seem really happy. They're all like parting ways to go to their own homes. It's super sweet. Like, it's such a sweet chapter. And then in true Kuroko's basketball, like, making your heart plummet to the bottom of your stomach, the chapter ends with it saying, after Amine's talent started blossoming, everything started to silently fall apart. And I was like, oh. I was like, we can't escape the Teiko trauma. Okay, great. I thought we could, but nope, we can't. Great. Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you, novel. So that was the first chapter. It was definitely the longest chapter. It was super cute. It was nice seeing them all like hang out and play games and everything. The shipping part was really fun, especially if you're like an Ao. If you're a Momoe Kuroko Ao Kuro shipper, then this chapter was really, really cute. I liked it a lot. Chapter 2 and chapter 4 are two chapters that go together. I'm not sure why they're separated. They could have been placed back to back, but it almost felt like the novel publishers needed something in between, because a span of time does pass between chapters 2 and 3. So maybe they put, or 2 and 4, so maybe they put chapter 3 in just to give you that sense of time passing. But chapter 2 is Kaijou High School's White Book of Youth. The summer vacation is still not over. This chapter is a lot of fun. It is basically taking place a week after Kaijou versus Toho's game. Moriyama, the guy that likes women, he tells Kisei and Kasamatsu that there are 3 key elements to a good summer: fireworks, yukata, and a test of courage. Which made me think of the audio drama we just listened to like last week that was about fireworks and yukata, and I was like, oh. And then oddly enough, the chapter at the end of the book is about a test of courage, so I was like, it was all kind of thematically tied together. I'm like, that's interesting. But that also Moriyama is like, one of the other key elements is picking up girls. So of course, Hayakawa joins them, one of the second years, and they convince Kisei that they need to go pick up girls together. And apparently the girls love citrus scents. Like Moriyama like bathes himself in like citrus deodorant and all this, and that's something that kind of comes around later in the story. I mean, citrus scents are fine. I don't think all women are attracted to them, but you do you. And so what I love about this is that Kasamatsu, he doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to go, but the team convinces him, and they convince him to go along too, because they give him the excuse. They're like, oh, well, Hayakawa, the one with the crazy eyebrows, they're like, he could get really out of hand and say something he shouldn't, so you need to be here to help keep him grounded. And Kasamatsu's like, okay. And then Kisei tries to leave. Kisei's like, I really don't want to pick up girls with y'all. This is embarrassing. And Kasamatsu's like, no, if I have to stay, you are staying. So I love that the two guys that are obviously a ship, obviously into each other, are the two that didn't want to go pick up girls. I'm just saying, taste the rainbow. That's just the two that didn't want to pick up girls are the two being shipped together. I'm just saying. So one of the teammates, Kabori, he confides in Kisei that the trip is not just for picking up girls, that they're all kind of worried about Kasamatsu, because after the Toho game, Kasamatsu really has gotten intense, and he's become kind of insatiable in training for the Winter Cup, and they're like, we need to calm him down, because since he's lost, he's like, this is our last chance, and getting all up and up. And Kisei decides to help based on that. And I'm going to read you verbatim a line from the novel that's been translated in English. I'm going to read you this word for word. Quote, Kisei originally was not interested in the group wanting to pick up girls, but after knowing that it was in order to help let Kasamatsu relax, he no longer opposed the idea. Shipping, y'all. Shipping! I was like, are you kidding me? And so Kasamatsu seems really nervous around the girls, and he asks Moriyama, they go to a station, and Moriyama's like, all girls hang out at the station. I'm like, okay. It's like mall rats. And he's like, well, what should we do? And Moriyama is asked by the group, like, how much experience do you have picking up girls? Because you're like, you seem to be a guru about it. And Moriyama admits the first time he ever talked to a girl was the week before at the Toho game. And I was like, you're a big fraud, right? And he said it ended poorly and wasn't even much of an attempt. And he says that this time is just for more practice. And Kasamatsu's like, well, go practice on your own. Why do we have to be here? So Kobori is sent to go first to talk to the girls, but it goes poorly. Like, his pickup line is, Miss, would you like a cup of tea? And it fails miserably. It's hilarious. Like, poor Kobori. And so Hayakawa's attempt is really quick and equally as failed. He asks the girls to come and cheer for him at the game, which you would think would be like a decent pickup, like, come and cheer for me at my game. Okay. The problem was the girl he picked out to say this to was the one that just rejected Kobori. So of course she's not going to go out with him. And they ask Hayakawa, they're like, why would you go after the girl that just rejected Kobori? And his answer is because he was, quote, in charge of rebounds. What? I was like, Izuki would have been proud of that pun. He would have been so proud to hear that. I feel like Hayakawa and Izuki would be really good friends. I think they're both into puns and like weird dad jokes. I think they would get along really well. So Moriyama agrees to go next, with Kasamatsu's like, you should have done this from the start. And I love the exchange from Kisei to Kasamatsu. Kisei says, I've noticed this before, but although Moriyama-senpai can't be compared to me, he's also considered good looking. Why doesn't he have a girlfriend? And then Kasamatsu's like, are you trying to show off? And like squishes Kisei's foot. He's like, quit making yourself seem better. It was super cute, right? And we find out that Moriyama's nickname on the team is the pitiful handsome guy, because he's way too cheesy romantic and he tries to go immediately head first about destiny and fated meetings, and he goes way too hard, and like the girls are like, they're too scared off by him. It's great. So Kasamatsu is fervent that he does not want to pick up girls at all. And Kisei asks if they could have a mixer. Like, he says, well, back at the Toho game, I said we could have a mixer. And Moriyama was like, well, that's if we won. I was like, really? You're going to be this petty? He's like, it's a no-go if we didn't win. And so Kisei's like, okay. Like, he makes Kasamatsu not have to speak up next. He's like, I'll go next. You stay here. I'll go hit on girls next and see what I can do. And that's when Kisei notices that there were a lot of girls around to begin with. And he's like, well, this is kind of weird. Why are all these girls walking around from the start? And then he realizes that it's not because Moriyama and them took them to the station that all the girls were there. All the girls were there because they're following Kisei. And I was like, oh, so Kisei finds this out and he convinces 5 of the girls to follow him and the guys to one of the restaurants. I was like, oh, cool. So it's like a little mini mixer at the restaurant. And all the girls leave to go to the washroom. And Kasamatsu has a panic attack because he's never apparently talked to a girl before. And it's like, oh no. And so he asks Kisei for advice. And Kisei's like, oh, well, just praise them and make them laugh. And then poor Kasamatsu, he's like bright red in the face. And he keeps saying, he's like, praise him, make him laugh, praise him, make him laugh, praise him, make him laugh. Like over and over again. So the girls come back out from the washroom and they've just like slutted themselves up. Like basically, they've like done all this makeup, they've got their hair all done, they've got lipstick on, they've like busted open their shirts, like pushed their boobs up, like they are ready to go to town. And all the guys are like, oh my gosh. And so when they get back to the booth, Kisei suggests that they make a toast and that Kasamatsu lead it, and it's his big moment. And instead of saying kampai, he says oppai, which means boobs. His toast is literally, he gets so nervous, instead of saying kampai, he says oppai. And then all the girls are like, what? And that's where the chapter ends. It's super cute. It was super cute watching our poor Kaijou boys. We'll talk about it in a minute. Our poor Kaijou boys are just, they have no luck with the ladies. None whatsoever. So chapter 3 is probably the most frustrating chapter, and I feel like it's because it's Teppei centered. I don't know why, but this series has a lot of trouble with Teppei stories. Maybe because he's too much of a cinnamon bun and a little bear, and they just don't know what to do with him, but they really have no clue what to do with him. He doesn't, I feel like when we had the audio dramas that were Teppei based, they were probably some of my least favorite. Not because they weren't good, but because it just seemed like they were kind of repetitive and they didn't have anything to do with Tepe. They were just like, he's here, here's a conflict, and we've resolved it. Like, they just seem really confused about what to do with him. Because this whole entire chapter 3 is called Seiren High School's basketball club's biggest crisis. And so the chapter starts with Hyuga reflecting on Tepe being a weirdo. Like, that's where it starts. And Tepe confronts him in the workroom and says, hey, I lost my wallet. And at first, Hyuga's kind of a jerk about it. He's like, oh, we'll just go file a missing items report, and I'm not loaning you any money. And I was like, Hyuga, don't be mean. And then Tepe reveals that the wallet he lost had the club's funds in it. And Hyuga instantly changes his tune. He's like, wait, what? And Tepe says, oh, well, Riko gave me the team funds to hold on to. I put them in my wallet, now they're gone. And so Hyuga freaks out. And so then Kuroko shows up to practice early along with Hyuga and Tepe. And Kuroko immediately becomes like Sherlock Holmes, which is adorable. He's like, apparently Kuroko reads a lot of detective novels, which is super cute. And he says he wants to help them find the wallet. And so the others come up and Azuki and them split up. And, well, Azuki wants to split up and Hyuga's like, no. He's like, we split up, too many people, namely Tepe and Kuroko, are going to get lost and we need them to help find the wallet. So we're not splitting up. So they all stay together as a group, which is fine. I liked that in the novel because later on in the last chapter, they're all going to split up. But in this one, they all stay together. And so apparently behind Seiren High is like this pond. It originally was a pool made from a rice paddy that the gardening club had, and the gardening club abandoned it, and now it's just this like marsh behind the school. And so Tepe says he comes there every morning and feeds the fish, which is really cute. But then Hyuga wonders if he dropped the wallet and the money in the pond while he was feeding the fish, and he gets mad and he kicks Tepe down into the water, which is really funny. And so while he's down there in the marsh, Kogane asks if they look for the wallet, what does it look like? And he says, quote, Tepe's wallet is a blue nylon wallet with Hanafuda patterns and a Buddha pendant that was bought during junior school class trip that's very eye-catching. Basically, it's the most gaudy wallet possible. And I was like, oh, that sounds so gaudy. That Tepe has this one that's just like, how could you miss it? So they keep looking for it. They don't find it in the marsh. They go to the cafeteria thinking maybe he dropped it at lunch, but they're worried that maybe it was stolen instead, and then they're screwed. And then Tepe remembers that he actually took the wallet with him to meet up with Riko in the home economics room. He didn't eat lunch that day because Riko was going to give her some of the food she made in home economics. And what I love about this is that Tepe is like, yeah, I like ate some of Riko's lunch in the home ec room, and then I blacked out and woke up in the broadcast room. So like the team's like, what do you mean you blacked out and woke up somewhere else? Like, what happened? So they go look at all the rooms and they still can't find the wallet. Like, it's nowhere to be found. And so in the end, the crazy thing is at first, when they can't find the wallet, Tepe's like, oh, well, we'll just forget about it. And Hugo's like, what do you mean we'll just forget about it? The club funds. So it's a little suspicious why Tepe suddenly just wants to stop and give up on finding it. But then he realizes that he says, he's like, I know the wallet's gone and we may have lost the money, but you know what? I realize that we have the power of the Nakama and all the bonds that we need to get through the Winter Cup. And Hugo's like, I don't care about Nakama. We need the club funds to be able to like afford anything moving forward. And that's when Kuroko sees Nago, who's found the wallet. But the club funds aren't in it. So at this point, it's just chaos. And Riko shows up and it's like, okay, well, how are we going to resolve this? And then we find out that Tepe was trying to get them to stop searching at the end, saying, oh, I don't care about the wallet. We made friends along the way. It's fine. Because he remembered that Riko hadn't given him the funds. She was going to give him the funds the next day and was just telling him about it. And the chapter ends with everyone smacking Tepe. So it was fun, but it felt like such a superfluous, like irrelevant chapter. It felt like by the end of it, we got nowhere. Like all we did was they affirmed that Tepe's weird and has a bad memory and has a gaudy fashion sense. But like it just went nowhere. The chapter was like, there was no resolution. It was just kind of like a misdirection the entire time. So it was fun, but again, I was like, man, Tepe just gets the short end of the stick when it comes to chapters. Now, we revisit Kaijou High in the Kaijou High's White Book of Youth summer vacation can't be allowed to end like this. Where in chapter 4, we go back to Kaijou, Moriyama and his citrus perfume, or citrus cologne rather, and we have Kisei inviting a fellow model and her friends to a joint party. Apparently, after things went terribly wrong with Kasamatsu's toast in chapter 2, they decided that they would actually host the joint party that originally Moriyama said they had to win to get at first. Now, what's interesting here is that they ask Kisei to coach them about talking to girls, since he's had the most experience with them. And Kasamatsu insists that he has no interest in women. We believe you. But he asks Kisei to go along with it, and Kisei agrees, saying he'll be very strict on them, a teacher. It very much was like the audio drama. I felt like the questions and things that they asked were very similar to the audio drama with Kogane that we already had, ironically enough, talking with Kaijou as well. So it felt like a rehash of that in some ways. But the model shows up with her friends, and Kisei starts asking them questions as girls. And then they struggle with a topic to talk about with the models. And Kisei says, well, talk about something you like. And so the guys are all like, what about basketball? And Kisei's like, well, under the right context, sure, you could talk about basketball with them. That should be fine. And so when the model shows up, everything goes okay at first. They ask Kasamatsu like what their interests are. And he says basketball. And it seems like it's going really well. And then they start to explain basketball more and more, and then the guys all start drawing like different plays on these notepads, and then it just becomes like them having a coaching session amongst each other where they're lining out plays, and the models completely lose interest and completely ignore them for the rest of the chapter. Poor Kaijou. I was like, Kaijou is just doomed. There's just no hope for them. None whatsoever. I was like, oh, you poor guys. I felt for them. I really did. So that leads us to the final chapter, which the second and third chapter with Kaijou were a lot of fun. I enjoyed them a lot. The chapter with Teppei was okay. It was probably my least favorite out of all of them because it didn't really have any impact. The first chapter with Teiko was like wonderful shippy moments, but I really liked the last chapter, which is the terror, the tragedy at the mountain resort. So this chapter takes place during their mountain training right before their Toho match, where they're up at the mountain lodge, and Riko suggests they do something that's tradition, which is have a test of courage, which in part means that they go to this haunted house on the side of the mountain in complete darkness with just torchlights, and they have to go through the entire house, like up to the second floor, down the second floor, like they have to go through the entire house in pairs or groups of 3 to test their courage. And the guys are all like, well, of course we could do that. Sure. The only one that's hesitant the entire time is Kagami. We've established in the manga and the audio dramas in the anime that Kagami is a big scaredy cat. He's a scaredy tiger. He is easily scared, and I relate to him so much. But our first team is Hyuga and Teppei, of course. The second team is Kagami and Kuroko, of course. The third team surprises me in that it's Izuki and Matobe, because I was thinking that Kogane and Matobe would be together, but there's a reason they're separated that we find out in the story later. And then there's Kogane and Tsuchida. And then there are the 3 that are forgotten, which is Furuhara, Kawahara, and Fukuda. They're the 3 left over. So basically, Riko sends them all out in groups at a time. They go out, like the first group goes out, and then 5 minutes pass. It's basically like when you go to attend an actual haunted house, the group in front of you goes first, and then you wait like 5 minutes, and then you go in, so that you guys are experiencing things kind of at the same time, but not. And plus, if those people scream, it'll like echo and you'll scream, and it's just like, it sets things up to be an experience. If you've ever been to a haunted house before, it kind of runs like that. So we start out with Teppei and Hyuga, and Teppei discovers this clown mask, and he scares Hyuga wearing it. And then Kagami is shown being terrified and needs Kuroko to stay with him. And the chapter actually starts out with Kagami and Kuroko like being scared, and then we backtrack and kind of get up to the point where we left off at. So it's a really good like narrative device. And Kuroko asks Kagami if he's scared of ghosts, and Kagami keeps denying it. And Kuroko, I love that the whole time Kuroko's like, are you scared of ghosts? He's like, oh no, of course not. And Kuroko's like, is that so? Do you not like scary stories? I'm totally fine. Is that so? Like, Kuroko is very convinced that Kagami is lying, which he is. And so we cut to Izuki and Matobe, And Azuki reveals that Hyuga is very scared of ghosts, and that he and Hyuga went to the same junior high, and Azuki told Hyuga a lot of scary stories as a kid, and that's probably what got him scared in the first place. And then Matobe thinks, we kind of get in Matobe's head, which is fun. We get the idea that Matobe thinks of how similar Azuki is to Kogane, and that Kogane is likely having the time of his life, which the fact that Matobe is instantly connecting to Kogane, I was like, make me ship them more. But the reality is that, yes, Kogane and Tsuchida, their group has a fun time the whole time in the haunted house. Their group's like, this is the best thing ever. Like, they're just having the best time at the test of courage. And then we cut to Fukuda and Furihara and Kawahara, who realize that they are just worn out from the training camp. They're like, they can't even enjoy the haunted house because they're like, we are too exhausted. And they come to the realization that the haunted house is just another way for them to stretch their muscles, like climbing up the stairs, climbing down the stairs. They're like, this is just part of our training. And it's like, yeah, it kind of is. So we cut back, again, we cut through all the different groups throughout this. We go back to Teppei and Hyuga, and we reveal that Hyuga is scared of, that Teppei is scared of rats. He's scared of rats because he was bitten by one as a kid, which I'm like, oh my God. I'm reading another story right now where there are rats in some of the chapters, and I was like, oh man, this is all coinciding around the same time. Interesting. But they stumble across this hallway, and all of a sudden this wheelchair starts moving towards them. So they think it's a ghost, and they run into this room to escape, and they start to try to figure out, like, logically, how could the wheelchair have chased them, and they can't come to an answer. Meanwhile, Kagami is asking Kuroko to keep talking, and so he won't be scared. He's like, keep talking while we're walking, and that way I won't be scared. And so Kuroko was like, well, I could tell you about my normal elementary school childhood. And Kagami's like, I can't picture you having a normal childhood, but go on. And so Kuroko ends up telling him this story about his friend who came face to face at their school with this apparition that asks, am I pretty? Which made me think of a recent episode of Jujutsu Kaisen, if you know what I'm talking about. The whole am I pretty line. And Kagami gets scared again. He's like, why would you tell me a ghost story? And Kuroko's like, you just said you wanted a story. It seemed appropriate. And as they're arguing, this spirit fire of red appears in front of them. Kagami freaks out, and Kuroko wants him to go look at it, and Kagami only follows because he doesn't want to be left behind by himself. So we cut back to Teppei and Hyuga. We cut back to them, and the room that they're hiding in, they find this can, and they think it's a protein drink, and they mention something about Riko wanting them to get the can on as part of the test of courage. But when they open it, this like rat on a spring, this rat doll on a spring pops out and scares Hyuga and Teppei into leaving the room. Like you do. This story, this chapter goes like all over the place to different people at different times, but it did keep you on your toes as you were reading. You were like, okay, I want to find out what happens to this group. Okay, now this group. And you just kind of went with the flow of it, right? So we cut back to Kagami and Kuroko, who go after the spirit fire, but they can't find the source of it. And then they start to hear a phone ringing. And Kuroko's like, well, we should answer the phone. And Kagami's like, haven't you ever watched any horror movies? You never answer the phone. It's very funny to see Kagami freaking out over all the horror tropes. And Kuroko just being like, but I want to. It's really cute. It's really, really cute. And so Hyuga and Teppei run into, they somehow, when they get freaked out by the rat on a spring, they get separated when they run out of the room. And we don't know where Teppei goes, but Hyuga runs into Izuki and Matobe. And the three of them see this green and white spirit fire, and at that time the floor seems to start to shake like it's possessed. And Kogane and Tsuchida hear what's going on. They hear Furihara and the others screaming, and they all think they've seen a ghost, and they start running towards the middle of the house, of the haunted house. So apparently it's not a ghost, but there's actually a tremor on the mountain that happens that causes part of the mansion to collapse. Luckily, nobody's hurt, which is good. But Riko manages to get there and runs into Kogane, Tsuchida, and Furihara, Kawahara, and Fukuda before anybody else. During the tremor, though, my Kagakuro heart was just so full, because during the tremor, Kagami like grabs Kuroko to save him. It's wonderful. And they dive into a room together to escape like a falling piece of wood. And so Kuroko says that they're supposed to grab a can of protein drink and take back as part of the test of courage, which is what Teppei and Hyuga ran into earlier. And as they leave the room, they find a can, but then as they look over from the can, they think they see a ghost in the hallway, and Kagami passes out. Kagami faints from seemingly seeing a ghost. So we get Hyuga and Azuki meeting up with the others, and that's when Riko reveals that the ghost they've all been seeing has been her dad, Kagetora. He was the one that accidentally ran into the wheelchair that got pushed down the hallway, and Hyuga and Teppei saw the wheelchair, but not Kagetora. He got caught up in the tremors. Apparently, he snuck out of the house to the haunted mansion to make sure that nobody was trying to make a move on his daughter, or he would kill them. I was like, yeah, basically their bodies would disappear into the mountains and they'd never be seen again, essentially. And so we find out the spirit fires. The red one was a match that Kagetora lit, and the green-white one was the phone that Kagetora had he was trying to call Riko, and that was the phone ringing that Kuroko and them heard earlier. I love this whole time Kagami has fainted from the ghost, and Kuroko has had to drag Kagami back to the group. It was super cute. And then we find out the ghost that made Kagami faint was Teppei running to meet up with all of them. So it's hilarious. Like, they all meet up together. They all get out of the haunted mansion. And right at the end of the chapter, Kagetora realizes, he's like, wait a minute. You mean to tell me you left my daughter outside all by yourself when you went in the haunted mansion? Why would you do that? And he gets like furious, and Kagami wakes up, sees Kagetora furious, and says that it wasn't a ghost, but a demon chasing them. It was super cute. It was my favorite chapter. I really loved the haunted mansion. I liked the Teiko stuff, sure, but the Teiko stuff is all it's stuff that we kind of already know about, like the arcade and everything, and you've seen it done before in anime, and so some of the stuff was a little bit predictable, even though like the stuff at the end with Kuroko and the basketball court was unique. But the haunted mansion was just a lot of fun. I really liked watching the groups like talk to each other, interact, have to like try to figure out the scary things and what's causing them. It was really, really super cute. And then the final chapter of the book is called I Am the New Member. It's from Nago's point of view, which is hilarious. And there was an author's note that said it should be read with a high and mighty tone. I just love that Nago has, like, this was the picture that came along with it. You're supposed to read it with very much, I picture Pro Z, like from, he's the voice actor, and I just feel like his deep voice. Like, just read it. And I love the opening line of Nago is, today I will present to everyone a day of my magnificent life. I was like, it's so cute. It's taken so seriously, but it's his like point of view. It's amazing. There are some lines like the ones with Seiren. Some of these I'm taking directly from the book. He says, I will always cheer loudly to encourage them. However, they completely do not understand how much consideration I have shown, and everyone will only know how to say, Nago's very energetic today. Really, they don't understand other people. No, other doggies' feelings. So impolite. However, I am a big-hearted doggy, so I will forgive them. I am really so great. It's so good. It's so good. And he questions the food that Riko makes him. He says that Seiren just like use them as therapy. They just pour their worries and heart and souls out to him about the upcoming Winter Cup. It's so freaking hilarious. And I love that this was the picture that go with it. It's this deep voiced, very serious dog that's high and mighty. It's like just all over it. It's great. So yeah, well, you guys have seen how long this video is. This is just me talking about one novel, and we still have 5 to go. Now, I have gone ahead and glanced just a little bit at, I pulled up to download each of the novels. Some of them, like this one had all the chapters translated with the pictures and everything. That is not the case with everything. There are some novels that I've been told do not have all the chapters translated. Some of them have like manga correspondence with them. So it'll be a hodgepodge. I'm sure the other 5 light novels, but this one was a lot of fun to read and I really enjoyed it. So I'm very curious to see what the other novels have in store for us, but this was super, super cute. So, but I'm excited, y'all. I hope you all are too, but I can't wait to see what happens next. So in the meantime, I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. What you guys think of this light novel, if you've read it. I definitely recommend giving it a read if you want to. It was super, super cute. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week to talk about the second light novel of Kuroko's Basketball Replace series.